Thank you for coming out in this unfortunately inclement weather, but sometimes inclement weather is an harbinger of very good things to come. And I think that's the case tonight with our speaker. My name is Bob Hefner. I'm the current director of the Center for the Study of Asia here at Boston University. And I'm very pleased to say this is the first in a rather rich series of lectures on Asia from different parts of Asia that we will be hosting this year. So if you haven't had a chance to check out the Center for the Study of Asia, its website, please do. There are other events coming up that will be of considerable interest to at least some of you. Just a quick footnote on that. I'm not going to say much more. The Center for the Study of Asia was created here at Boston University about 13 or 14 years ago, but its legacy, its roots, its networks go back actually at least 35 years, and that's to say I remember it 35 years ago, if I can say that without give reference to that date without too much embarrassment. There's always been an abundance of riches with regard to Asia and Asian studies here at Boston University. One of the distinctions is that, first of all, the riches, even though rather heavily, some of which is rather heavily concentrated in East Asia with particular attention to China, Japan, it's a richness that also extends across the full breadth of Asia, including, I might add, Inter-Asia, Central Asia, and Western Asia. So we build on that precedent, a precedent that goes back actually about 4 decades. Over that entire time, Boston University has had a strong commitment to a richly multidisciplinary study of Asia. So those networks were mobilized and effectively concentrated about 14 years ago in the center, to which I am the current director heir, but which a number of people in this room played a very, very critical role in organizing, not least of all if I will point out Professor Catherine Ye, who will be introducing our speaker tonight, and to whom I will end simply by saying thank you, Kathy, for all that you have done in bringing together this wonderful inaugural event for our year. And without further ado, and without me introducing the speaker, let me give the microphone to you, and thank you again, and thank everyone for coming.
This is a very, very exciting and very special event we have today. We're honored to have Yingtai coming to Boston University. Today, the world is facing many challenges. For us, each person, for our society, each society, has moral choices to make, have practical considerations to determine where we are going. It is so much more so for a public intellectual that is living and working in Taiwan today. Yingtai, as you all know, is one of the Chinese language most famous writer, critic, cultural critic, political critic. She first came to the fore with her first book, Wildfire Collection, 野火集. Some of you were not born yet, probably, when this book was published in 1985. I am a late Qing scholar, so everything is 18-something. And 1985. It was instant success and became a bestseller. In 21 days, 24 editions were reprinted. Most of Taiwan were discussing this book and in Southeast Asia. Some of the titles that from this book I'm going to read to you, you might have heard of it. Chinese, why are you not mad? Taiwanese, why are you not mad? The mother who has gonorrhea. 台湾人，你为什么不生气？生了梅毒的母亲。So it's an outcry of confronting Taiwan's social problems, environmental problems, the messiness of traffic, directions, but underneath is calling for every citizen to stand up and influence policy making. This is the beginning of a mass discussion on democracy, how a society should be run, and the individual, the citizen's responsibility. After that, she wrote about 40 books, and many people have been very much impacted by her writing. Her writing is very perceptively subversive, I will say. When I first read her books, I started to laugh and laugh. It is so interesting how she talks about the largest political issues through very personal, through a very local perspective. She makes it tangible. She then became a politician. A writer then actually put her ideal into practice. She became Taipei 文化局局长, right? Became the first, she created the position of Taipei Cultural Bureau and became the first director. Started to promote culture, put in institutional support. Then in 2012, she became Taiwan's first cultural minister, which involved a lot of groundwork in putting in civil society and the relationship between a cultural production and the political structure. Then she went back to become a writer and wrote one of the most controversial books. In 2009, she came out with Big River, Big Sea, Untold Story of 1949. And in the interview, she said, this book I want to dedicate to my parents' generation. They never had a history. They were the losers. Nobody will write a history of the huge migration from mainland China to Taiwan. I want to dedicate this book to all the dead soldiers, citizens through this kind of war and migration. They also never will have a history. And finally, she says, I dedicate this book to the younger generation to understand the untold history, that how we came to become Taiwanese today in Taiwan and mainland China in that sense. She also have been very outspoken as a public intellectual. Some of you will know throughout the decades, she challenged the power elite. And in 2019, when the Hong Kong student movement was at its height, and the Chinese government was contemplating on a kind of bloodshed, a suppression, she wrote a 300-word short letter to the Communist Party of China, urging the Beijing to understand towards Hong Kong protesters. She appeals evoked robust reaction from People's Daily, 人民日报, and CCTV, the Chinese state television. Since then, all her books have been banned. But you can't ban Long Yingtai's voice. People do read her, and we are very, very lucky to have her come and exchange ideas and talk about today a look inside Taiwan in the time of Cross-Strait Crisis. Let's welcome Long Yingtai.
What a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Dr. Hevner. Thank you, Cassie. Okay, so I really have something that I'd like to share with you today. In order to highlight the seriousness of the topic today, I'm going to read to you a very short news clipping from the National Defense Ministry of the Republic of China just hours ago. It says, from September 17 to the early hours of the 18th, which is today, our military has detected a total of 103 instances of aircraft engaging in maritime activities, which is a recent record high. The surge poses a serious challenge to the security of the Taiwan Strait and the region at large. Of these instances, there were a total of 40 breaches of the median line and its extensions, encroaching into the southwest and southeast airspace, while there were also 9 naval vessels operating in the vicinity of Taiwan's waters. The military reiterates its vigilant monitoring and employing task force ships and coastal missile system. This is the news from today. The Ministry of National Defense emphasizes our steadfast approach of, quote, preparedness for war, reluctance for conflict, readiness for engagement, and avoidance of confrontation, adhering to a strategy that places operational preparedness at its core and training as its focus. The military adopts a, quote, battlefield everywhere mindset and integrates the concept of training at all times to enhance our defense capabilities. So this is the news from today, a couple of hours ago. And that's the situation that Taiwan is in currently. I'm not a political scientist, so what I wish to share with you today is not a scientific political analysis of the situation in Taiwan. Instead, I would like to offer my personal observations as a writer and former civil servant and former policymaker. 6 years ago, I relocated to a farming community in southern Taiwan, where I was privileged to become close friends with many farmers and fishermen. Then again 3 years ago, I moved to the indigenous village on the east coast of Taiwan, while Taipei has remained the center of my intellectual life. My village life has changed my understanding of the world in a very important way. So I'm going to try this one. Do I go right? No. Do I go up? No. Do I go down? No. Do I go left? No. Maybe I just use the computer? Okay. So, if you're not familiar with Taiwan, that means my intellectual center is up north in Taipei. I first moved down south to a farming community, and then I moved across the big mountains. Now I am at an indigenous village at the Pacific. To start, I've learned So what happened to me when I moved to this indigenous village? First of all, I've learned not to fully rely on the TV weather anchor. You mentioned the weather today. Well, for my village, which has gone in 1 month, we have gone through earthquakes and typhoons. The weather today is just fine. When a typhoon approaches, the anchor people on TV, they predict its path with anticipation, speculating about the possibility of a typhoon holiday. As the rain pours and the winds pick up strength, the anchor's tone can even sound celebratory as they highlight the escalating intensity. Meanwhile, my farming friends sit at home, consumed by worry. Their year-long efforts could go to waste as their crops and orchards face potential destruction. So the mood is very, very different. Do I go right? Okay. So if you look at Taiwan from Eluanbi, from the southern tip of the island, and you look like this, to the left is the Taiwan Strait. Of course, the left of the Taiwan Strait is China. And I moved from the point on the plain over the big mountains to the Pacific. So these are my farmer friends. So when typhoon comes, we'll get together and discuss how do we manage the sluice, because the water supply is going to be stopped. My fishermen friends have ceased their fishing activities long before the typhoon becomes newsworthy for the city folk, because the sea warning always comes before the land warning. In other words, a typhoon never signifies a holiday for the farmers and the fishermen. Instead, it only translates into a loss of daily income. So the perspectives are really very different. In October 2022, my home was struck by an earthquake that left its mark. Significant landslides emerged on the mountain slopes. So this is where the map of Taiwan and all the red dots are the epicenters of earthquakes. And therefore, the Boston weather is just perfect. All the red dots are the earthquake centers. And so these mountains you see is right behind my house. And usually it's so green, so beautiful green. And now you see the cracks in the mountain. It all comes from that earthquake. And the fish pond I tended was cleaved in two. Sturdy steel water tanks were contorted and shattered, and everything within the house, from plates to glass bottles, was reduced to shards, and my whole house smelled whiskey because they were all broken. The nearby village experienced such severe ground shifting that the rice fields underwent a radical transformation, leading to the demise of most of the crops. But my friends in the city, they were very surprised to hear about the extent of damage from a first-hand account and asked, really? Did something happen? No wonder, because the earthquake didn't even make to the news. So I held a position as a national policy maker once, occupying a government seat at the heart of the capital. However, since moving to the peripheral, so to speak, I've gained a keen appreciation of the contrasting viewpoints that exist between the urban elite and the rural populace. As a policymaker, sitting at the perceived center, you easily lose sight of what you perceive as peripheral. But losing sight of the peripheral is a very dangerous thing, because the consequences may prove in the end that they might well, the truth might well lie in the peripheral. And yes, I am actually referring to policymaking in the escalating situation over the Taiwan Strait. I would like to remove this platform here. Can someone help me? Because, please. Oh, yeah, thank you so much. This one here. Yeah, move to this one. No, I mean what I'm stepping on. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Can you still see me? I'm too short. Okay. As cross-strait tension escalated and the Taiwanese citizen awoke to the unsettling designation of their homeland as, quote, the most dangerous place on earth by certain Western media outlets, coupled with daily portrayal of the Russian incursion into Ukraine, conversations regarding the possibility of war began permeating dinner table discussions in Taipei. Navigating between the bustling metropolis in Taipei and the laid-back village where I live, I find myself immersed in two distinctly divergent realms, both of which are reflecting on the specter of war. On August 4th, 2022, about exactly a year ago, China conducted large-scale military drills in the waters around Taiwan. The 6 exclusive zones for live fire exercises cut into the claimed 12 nautical miles of Taiwan's territorial waters, amounting to a blockade of Taiwan's sea and air space, an unprecedented situation in 70 years. The drills would include ballistic missile launches, some of which in the days to come flew over the sky of Taiwan. Strategically positioned, the drills literally sealed the important port of Keelung up in the north, while targeting the military air bases on the East Coast. I also live near an air base, so I would see the jet planes, the fighter planes, every day, and I would hear them as well. And cutting off the gate to Kaohsiung Port in the south, you know where Kaohsiung is, which is an indispensable waterway for the weekly arrival of natural gas coming into Taiwan. The waterway is vital. Why? Because 99% of Taiwan's natural gas is imported, and its reserve security stockpile can only last for 8 days. Amid this critical juncture, the sophisticated dining tables of Taipei found themselves engulfed in discussions that revolve around the uncertain prospect of conflict. On one such occasion, a gathering predominantly composed of luminaries from the high-tech industry of Taiwan found themselves engaged in a conversation spanning the expanse of global competition within the semiconductor industry, intertwining with contemplations regarding the strategic path of TSMC in the face of potential blockade. So, what's the importance of TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor manufacturing company. This is the map, which shows the red part is the world market of semiconductor products. The red part is from Taiwan, and the other colors are the rest of the world. Okay, and so in the face of a potential blockade, and beyond the prospect of unified action among allies, hopefully, the speedy evacuation of indispensable semiconductor designers and engineers emerged as a paramount consideration. Get the people out, these semiconductor engineers and designers. After casual remarks concerning the plausible bombardment of TSMC by either the Chinese or the Americans, the dialogue ventured into the realm of a conspiracy, which I heard the first time on that dinner table. The conspiracy speculates that vested interest might orchestrate an assault upon a nuclear power plant in Taiwan, deliberately triggering a catastrophic release, thus rendering Taiwan a desolate and futile terrain for any prospective occupying entity. Bombing TSMC, as if the top treasure that the Taiwanese have built up with their brain and blood for several decades, were just a simulated target in a computer war game. And the conspiracy theory, however incredulous it may be, reveals the surrealistic situation of Taiwan being caught between two giants. Back to the dinner table. A researcher affiliated with a military think tank underscored a distinct set of other concerns, those rooted in the realm of accidents. He emphasized the potential gravity of ostensibly minor incidents like unintended collision among surveillance aircraft, or unexplained delays in warning communications. Such unanticipated circumstances, he said, bore the capacity to swiftly escalate into large-scale confrontations. With a palpable urgency, he articulated the vital necessity of modernizing Taiwan's arsenal, meaning buying more weapons from the United States. However, a retort followed as someone queried, quote from this person, he said, actually that was a military person, he said, for heaven's sake, why are we spending so much money acquiring tanks from the US when two-thirds of our land, when two-thirds of our land is blanketed by mountain ranges towering between 2,000 to 3,000 meters. In July this year, a couple months ago, I was invited to participate as observer in a tabletop exercise. I don't know if you are familiar with the term. Tabletop exercise, 兵推. The primary focus of the exercise encompassed several crucial subjects, such as various scenarios for military attacks, including amphibious operations, air and naval transportation disruption, energy and power supply obstruction, especially concerning the semiconductor industry, and medical supply management. Along the extensive, you have to see this photo. So this, me being in a war room. Along the extensive 1,200 kilometer coastline, only a limited number of beaches are viable for the landing operation of the AAV-7A1. All this, what I'm sharing with you, are unclassified information, and I specifically got the permission from the admiral who conducted the war room to share with you. Due to the dense development along most part of the coastline, leaving insufficient maneuvering room for effective landing or attacks. So unlike Ukraine, it's very, very difficult for the landing from the PLA military force. Within the confines of the war room where I was in, a dissection of PRC's grand strategy was also undertaken as depicted in this slide, but of course it's very small. I just want you to get a feeling what a war room does. Concurrently, regional geopolitical landscape was analyzed. Deliberations encompassed an array of vital concerns. For example, what role does DPRK's possession of nuclear weaponry assume? North Korea, as we see that North Korea is at the moment getting very close to Russia, and with the arsenal, with the nuclear arsenal they possess, what role does that play in this regional conflict? How does the intricate theater of high-tech warfare, including the competitive advancement of 5G, AI, DNA, and space technology, unfold in this scenario? PRC's strategic agenda targeted Taiwan, constituting a significant facet of the overreaching grand strategy, the enactment of the anti-secession law and anti-spy law established a legal foundation for addressing the Taiwanese situation. This encompassed a multifaceted approach, including psychological warfare, media manipulating involving the propagation of disinformation, orchestration of deceptive polls. The Taiwanese presidential election is coming up in January. And diverse methods of infiltration. Additionally, efforts extended to enticing advantages designed to wield influence among the younger generation and the working class. So this is a fun picture. Amidst the deliberation concerning the efficacy of, I don't know if you heard of the porcupine strategy, meaning that Taiwan should be militarily built up so much that Taiwan is a porcupine to deter the enemy. Amidst the deliberation concerning the efficacy of the porcupine strategy as a viable deterrence, I caught wind of discourse taking place at one of the exercise tables. Two retired American military personnel staunchly advocated for a swift and resolute retaliatory response upon confirming an invasion. Conversely, a military strategist of Taiwanese origin held firm in emphasizing the significance of diplomatic negotiation and tactful handling. He advocated that the pursuit of peace should remain unwavering even in the face of encroachment. the two perspectives clash right there, with the Americans asserting that immediate and overwhelming counteraction was the sole viable approach. These two, they did not reach a consensus. I think they were actually politely angry at one another. Against the backdrop of these weighty deliberations occurring within the capital, that's Taipei, a contrast becomes evident the moment you step outside the war room. Everyday life carries on. Anybody who visits Taiwan in the past year, journalist or political scientist, landed in Taiwan, they were surprised how calm the Taiwanese are. Even during one of the biggest military drills, a sense of leisure and civility prevails. In the midst of a tank exercise, someone apparently overlooked clearing a restricted area, and therefore there you find a woman there bathing in the sun, leaving a woman basking in the sun, bewildered by the unexpected sight that met her gaze. I think the soldiers were surprised too. They were surprised at each other, and this is how one of the biggest military drill in Taiwan. Something like this could happen. Now, let's move to the peripheral I mentioned, 300 kilometers away from Taipei. I own a farmhouse on the east coast of Taiwan that faces the Pacific Ocean, and my nearest neighbor is about 2 kilometers away. From my porch, I could see the village where the indigenous Amis people live. They are traditionally fishermen. Once I was sharing my story of growing up poor in Taiwan with an older Amis gentleman. I asked her how he understood what it meant being poor as he grew up when he was a child. He said, not really. We had shabby clothes and didn't wear shoes, but when we were hungry, we jumped into the ocean and lobsters were our daily breakfast. The Pacific was our refrigerator and it's always full. So as a child, he actually never understood what being poor meant. Again, around the time of Pelosi's visit, a message arrived from one of my neighbors suggesting that each of us should cultivate diverse vegetables and crops in our respective gardens to prepare for the specter of war. Furthermore, neighbors should get together to procure essential water supplies and even generators in preparation for power outage and water shortage. And I said, well, if we were going to start a self-reliant kibbutz, I responded, I would opt for the banana as my crop. Banana trees hardly need any care, boast elegant leaves and produce attractive fruits, with which I could make banana bread and banana yogurt drinks. So we joked about the war. I did not at all expect to have such a conversation down at the remote coast, but I couldn't help but ponder, well, do my rural counterparts share the same apprehension of impending conflict as my urban intellectuals? Do they debate politics over their dinner tables situated amidst orchards and rice fields? And what of my friends who make their livelihood as fishermen? Oh, this is my village. And this is the old gentleman who didn't know what poverty meant because the ocean is his refrigerator. And this is my garden, so I could grow my own vegetables. Many men from a village have spent, like these men around this table, they have spent decades on large fishing trawlers, and they could easily name those very remote Pacific islands. And they too, I wonder, are they too grappling with the weight of concern over the looming possibility of war? So whenever I would attend gatherings with my fellow farmers, we come together to eat, drink, laugh, and have a good time. After a strong typhoon that tore down nearly all my trees in my 2-acre garden, they came over with chainsaws and various other tools and restored the garden in 3 hours. And after the work, we sat down and ate and drank and laughed and had a good time. So if you have orchard farmer friends, this is what you will get. And after the work, then we got together to have a good time, me with all the farmers in my home. So unlike city dwellers, these rural folks usually avoid discussing politics during these jovial occasions and remain careful not to reveal their political leanings in order to preserve the festive atmosphere. So I had to speak with them privately to learn their honest opinion about war. I first reached out to Jay. Let's say he's Jay. His 3-hectare orchard has about 800 wax apple trees. Do you know what wax apples are? 莲雾. There you are. 莲雾. That's the wax apple. Unlike bananas or pineapple, wax apples require intensive care and high-end skill. So not all farmers are qualified to grow wax apples, and therefore wax apples are very expensive. Jay wakes up at 4 a.m. and by 5, when it's still dark, he's already working in the orchard wearing a headlight. I went with him once at 5 o'clock in the morning. He checks on the condition of every single fruit hanging on the tree. It's amazing, 800 trees, and it's as if they were his own children. He almost knew every single fruit. It's unimaginable. He went there to check and detect the earliest sign of any pest invasion on the fruit. At 60, he looks much older, skinny and worn, with very dark skin, bronzed by the perpetual exposure to the tropical sun. A man of few words, Jay had never exceeded a handful of sentences in discourse. He does not talk. Amidst boisterous gatherings, he would linger in quietude, a serene smile gracing his visage as he tended to replenishing half-drained teacups. He never talked. He was always the one filling tea into your cups. So in order to understand, to know what he thinks, I really have to talk to him just one-on-one. However, on this occasion, he spoke with an openness and sincerity that surprised me. Often halting to gather his thoughts and occasionally stumbling over words, he really opened up. So, quote from him, "Just think, Yingtai, you can easily envision US warplanes raining destruction upon Taiwan, US raining bombs on Taiwan. All through my growing up, I heard from my parents and grandparents stories of World War II warplanes bombing my home villages, and I had always thought it's the Japanese. Only in my 50s did I realize these were the American warplanes that bombed us. Because Taiwan was part of Japan, and the Allies bombed Taiwan when he was a child. Jay was convinced that war across the strait would be inevitable. So this is a perspective from a farmer. Strategically, Taiwan finds itself ensnared as a mere pawn on the geographical chessboard, manipulated by the US and China. If China dominates over Taiwan, the US would surely respond with some form of conflict against China, thrusting Taiwan into the vanguard. Conversely, should Taiwan remain its allegiance with the US, China's specter of a military takeover would persist as a perpetual threat. Therefore, Taiwan remains fated as an enduring bastion of the precipice of warfare. So Taiwan is fated. But why does China want to go to war with Taiwan? This is from Jay. Jay expressed a bewilderment with unwavering assurance. He insists that the flames of animosity were kindled by politicians from both sides of the strait, exploiting the masses for their own political ends. He thinks most of the Taiwanese do not hold anything against China. Quote from him, "The only thing China has to do is simply being nice to the Taiwanese. Be gentle, be considerate, be respectful, and don't weaponize the agricultural market, then no one hates them." End quote. On the other hand, if China continues with harsh measures and aggressive language, Jay believes that would only feed the DPPs, that's the current ruling party, that would only feed the DPP's propaganda machine to mobilize hatred against them, and it's foolish. So this is the position from Jay. However, Jay does not hold the DPP responsible for the current precarious situation, nor the KMT. This shy wax apple farmer is convinced that the US is the one bringing Taiwan to the brink of war out of a fear of losing its own global hegemony. And it is very unfortunate, according to Jay, it is very unfortunate to say that the Taiwanese must be grateful to Ukraine, because if the Russian-Ukrainian war had ended in just 3 days, Jay believes that Taiwan would have already been finished. The fact that it has turned into a long-lasting and messy war has served as a clear warning to Beijing to think twice before making any moves. So this farmer, he never talked, and once he talked, he has a theory. Quote from Jay, "What I wish to see in my lifetime is a strong and prosperous China, standing tall in the world, itself a more humane and open society, on friendly terms with the West, and Taiwan being part of China. Let peace unify Taiwan and China." Quote from him. And then I said, "Jay, this might be a wishful thinking, but when war does break out, would you fight?" What do you think he would say? Would he fight? Yes. He said, he spoke slowly, deliberating every word, and said, "Yes, I definitely will. But I fight not for my so-called country. I fight for my home, for my family, for my village, for people I love. All the above comes from this wax apple farmer. Okay, and then I went to another friend. Do you know these fruits? This tree? They look like apples, right? But they are not. Have you ever heard of Indian jujube fruit? 蜜枣, 枣子. Yeah, but this is special because in India, it's very small, so small. And the Taiwanese cultivated these Indian jujube fruit, so they are so big, looking exactly like an apple, and they are sweet, crispy, and very juicy. Okay, and this fruit is also very expensive because it takes technology and intensive care. And the next person I talked to is, I call him Ping. I reached out to Ping, a successful farmer who at the age of 45 owns over 10 hectares of land. You know, when these farmers' friends drove their car to my humble garden, I drive a Jeep, and 10 of them would come. You would see 3 BMWs, and then probably another 3 Tesla, the newest model of Tesla. So you have to have a different understanding of what farmers are. And my Jeep, my car, is the cheapest of all. Okay, and he cultivates more than 10,000 Indian jujube trees, with China being his major market. I asked him how his produce has been affected by the political situation and whether the Taiwanese government's efforts to open up new markets such as Japan has been successful. 蜜枣, jujube fruit. Ping responded by first explaining the impact of the 2010 Economic Cooperation Framework Agreement, so-called ECFA, signed by the Taiwanese government under KMT and China. He noted that that agreement from 2010 allowed a list of agricultural goods to enter Chinese ports through a so-called green lane, meaning that the jujube fruit could reach Chinese supermarkets in just 2 to 3 days, as fast as the domestic market because of that green lane. Reflecting on the current situation, Ping's frustration was evident. He remarked that the government's apparent emphasis on independence of Taiwan had offended China, so this is his perspective, resulting in market closure. As an alternative, Taiwan turned to Japan, but Ping highlighted the substantial challenge posed by this shift. What are the challenges? The requirement for an unbroken cold chain. You know, I don't know what's the requirement of coldness for jujube fruits to go through the whole transportation chain to reach the Japanese market. But I know, for example, for strawberries, coming from the farm, you pick the strawberries and then put it in the truck and maybe to put in the storage and then to the airplane, and then it reaches the other shore. It has to remain at a temperature of 2 centigrade. Otherwise, it's broken. And it really needs high tech to remain this coldness. So in order the requirement for an unbroken cold chain, maintaining a steady, he told me, 1.2 degrees Celsius for the jujube trees, fruits. The requirement for this temperature during transportation and storage led to a predicament. After enduring journeys of some 14 days, sometimes 21 days, from his farm, from his orchard, to the Japanese market, probably takes 21 days. Ping lamented that his juicy, crispy, sweet, and fresh jujubes taste like nothing when they reach the Japanese consumers. When it comes to Taiwanese pineapples, the same fate befalls them. Due to the length of time in storage and transport, it's common to find so-called mealy bugs, mealy bug eggs in the fruit, in the pineapple, when you transport them. The Japanese, therefore, apply, when the pineapple arrive on the Japanese shore, the Japanese apply the process of so-called steaming and fumigation to the fruits, which involves using chemicals to create an environment lethal to pests and other organisms. As a result, when the sweetest and freshest pineapples from Taiwan reach the Japanese consumer, they taste awful. Chemicals already are in there. While the government proudly declares that Taiwan does not need the Chinese market, the farmers remain quiet. So Ping spoke with a sense of, he talked about all this within a detachment, as if describing a scene from a movie. And quote from him, "If there's a war, you know, those who suffer the least are probably us, the farmers. We are people who toil the soil. When the fighter jets fly over our heads, you know what we do? We bend down and continue to till the land." He has thought that far. Ping has 2 children, aged 20 and 21, who are both college students. They enjoy watching Chinese movies, TV series, and often glued to TikTok. They do not view the Chinese as their enemies. Ping believes that unresolved issues should be left to the next generation to handle. So what's the hurry? He shared with me the lessons he learned from reading the history of Tokugawa, De Chuanjiakang, which emphasized patience and endurance as the most precious virtues. He said, face to face with the giant, Taiwanese people must learn the art of patience and endurance, making ourselves strong while learning to be humble. We should not engage in a battle where we have no chance to win. Instead, we should learn how to juggle. If we must upset and offend someone, then we should upset and offend those who have less capability to harm us. So, I never want to miss an invitation from Farmer Ho. His dinner table is always a grand feast celebrating the bounties of the ocean, incredible tables. He performed the skill of swordfish hunting, 旗鱼, with great finesse. Standing at the bow of a boat charging to stormy seas, he balances himself like Spider-Man, holding a harpoon. I saw those harpoons. Holding a harpoon in his hand, which is 5 meters in length and 20 kilos in weight, while pursuing a 2-meter-long swordfish that swims furiously away from the boat. He has to strike the fish with precision and force without losing the harpoon, all the while the boat rocks and crashes with the waves. He goes out to sea every day. Whenever he catches an unusually big fish, he invites friends over to dinner and then and take photos of his catch. On one such occasion, he talked about how to escape from Taiwan to Japan in case of war. It would take his boat only 14 hours to reach Okinawa. And then he said, "Hey, anybody need a lift? I got a boat." He joked. And someone mentioned that only 5 million Japanese yen is required to apply for an immigration permit. Another person added, "But it would be so boring to eat sashimi every day, right?" So everybody laughed. Are we serious about the war, or are we not? So during our private conversation, just between Ho and myself, he again surprised me with his seriousness. Quote from him, "If China invades Taiwan, of course I would take up arms and fight them, exactly like the Ukrainians do. It's not that I dislike the Chinese. We are people of the sea. On the big waves, there is no skin color, no nationality, no borders, and the only thing that matters is survival, so I will fight. What I hate about the Chinese is the way they treat us Taiwanese. They talk as if they owned us and as if they had the right to humiliate us. I don't hate the Chinese, but I hate all bullies." And then I said, "Does your son feel the same as you do? Would he fight like you?" He sighed. He said, "The younger generation does not seem to even think about the possibility of war. They stare into their mobile phones, go out with friends, eat, date, camp, and fish. They live every day as if nothing has happened and nothing will ever happen." So I asked Ho if he would condemn those who prepare a boat or apply for immigration or buy a foreign passport, as some of my urban friends have been doing. No, he said, he has ample understanding for people who make different choices. He said everyone has to decide on his own what to do with his life. With the presidential election approaching in January, I asked Ho which candidate or political party he believes is more capable of preventing war. Without hesitation, It's messed up. Just 1 second. It's totally messed up. Give me a minute. Oh. I'm sorry. Okay. So I asked him, what does he think or predict about the election? Which party, which candidate? We have many major candidates today. And which party does he think are most capable of preventing the outbreak of war? And you know what he said? Can you imagine what he said? The KMT or the DPP or anyone else? And this is what he said. He said, no one. It's the US and China who decide our fate. Whoever gets elected in Taiwan plays no role. I want you to know who he would hold accountable if war were to break out. And when I asked the question, I thought, wow, this is a very difficult political as well as philosophical question. Who do you hold responsible? I was totally unprepared for his swiftness and confidence. He said, whoever fires the first shot is the criminal. Whoever fires the first shot is the criminal. Okay, so these are my farm fisher friends. Back to the war game in Taipei. During the war gaming exercise, there was one session focused on medical logistics resupply. You know, people would die, soldiers and civilians both. And how do you supply medical necessities? A retired general explained that the Ministry of Defense, the Taiwanese Ministry of Defense, has already allocated budget purchasing basic medical supplies such as painkillers and bandages. Someone raised the question whether the general public is aware of the official estimates concerning the number of injuries and fatalities sustained during the initial week of battles. The answer was that the latest estimation of these figures had been disclosed in 2003, which was 20 years ago. And the CSIS from the US, the CSIS War Game report released on January this year predicted that during the initial conflict of the war, Taiwan's Air Force would suffer the majority of losses, including 534 combat aircraft, that's about all of it, during the first week. 38 major vessels, which is about all of it, and some 3,500 casualties among military personnel. And this did not encompass civilian casualties, which typically exceed the number of military losses by a factor of 4 to 5. At this juncture, a professor raised the question, what quantity of blood is required for a single person during a transfusion? An army doctor responded that the average red blood cell transfusion usually accounts to about 3 units. But a single car accident victim can require as many as 100 units of blood. And how much blood do we have during the peacetime, like now? The answer is, during peacetime, blood stocks across Taiwan and all blood types would suffice only 3.4 days. That's in peacetime. Then I raised my hand, inquiring whether the new defense budget included body bags. You will have corpses on the road, and you will need people to deal with the bodies, and then you need body bags. So I asked, well, have they considered body bags? Does the budget include body bags? The Russian invasion served as a chilling reminder, having taken place in freezing February temperature. So the bodies were all frozen. Whenever conflict erupts, either whether it's in July in summer or even January in winter, whenever conflict erupts in Taiwan with its tropical climate, the inevitability of rapid decomposition and putrefaction becomes evident within hours. Within hours, you will have the stench of decayed bodies. In simple terms, amidst the grandiose posturing of politicians, are they attuned to the pragmatic necessity of estimating the required number of body bags? A heavy hush fell with my question. What lies within the implications of blood bags and body bags is that the majority of war game reports I have encountered are brimming with numerical abstractions and militaristic terminology, or emphasizing Taiwan's pivotal role within the First Island chain's strategic framework. Over the past 2 years, as tensions have heightened across the Taiwan Strait, political scientists and military strategists have conducted numerous simulations, and I only witnessed one of them, exploring the potential of a Sino-US war and its likely outcomes. These war games are specifically crafted to illustrate how one country can employ its military capabilities to deter the action of another. And most analysts concur that costs associated with a Sino-US war would be substantial for both China and the US. The cost for Taiwan is not much talked about. It's simply taken for granted. I've long held a sense of discomfort toward these war games, toward these narratives, no matter how well-intentioned and necessary they may be. Why is there such an exclusive focus on war games to study methods of killing with hardly any emphasis on peace games, to explore ways to reduce tension and prevent war? Why do we only have war games? Why do we not have peace games? Why do American and Chinese policymakers primarily preoccupied with military strategies for deterrence and aggression, rather than dedicating a substantial efforts to thoroughly understand how to employ all the tools of power to foster stable international relations, particularly in times of weighted rivalry? While my homeland, Taiwan, may be fated to serve as a crucial military station in the First Island chain, a strategic target, or it's just a launching pad in a war game, a mere pawn on a geopolitical chessboard. I think it is imperative that we consistently remind the world that within this symbolic chess piece resides a population of 23 million vibrant, vivid souls. Each person is pulsating with sorrows as well as aspirations. They are not abstract concepts. They are flesh and blood. Therefore, when they are dying, they will need blood bags, and when they do die, they will need body bags. Taiwanese, like everyone else, are dreamers of love and freedom and peace, just like everybody else, and I think they do deserve it too. I thank you for your attention.
Yeah, my name is C.T. Tang. I'm a retired person in the community. I think I was impressed with your suggestion of a pre-game. And last week, through Zoom, I attended a symposium in Harvard about the chip war. And then a representative from Taiwan, I think Taiwan Tsinghua University, suggests instead of talking about chip war, talk about chip peace. So the question I have is, recently China proposed, I don't know what's the right translation, 融合, fusion, between Fujian and Taiwan. What do you think the candidates will respond to that?
You mean the presidential candidates?
Yes.
Oh, I don't know what they think. But I think the Taiwanese desire for keeping their way of life with freedom and in open society is the primary focus of the Taiwanese. And I hope the Chinese policymakers would understand how important this is. And so when the Chinese talk about blood is thicker than water, that kind of narrative actually does not carry any conviction for the Taiwanese, because if you are relatives, so-called blood thicker than water, even if you're family members, and if you are brothers, but if you don't respect my desire for an open society living in freedom, then even family members cannot get along. So, so when you talk about fusion, it depends on what's the content of fusion. If fusion means to force you to live the way I do, then it's going to be very, very difficult. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Cici. I am a journalism student at BU. I am from mainland China. I'm Cantonese. So my question is, in this time and day, like, what can I do, or what can our generation do to, react to the situation as like a mainland Chinese student?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Hi, Dr. Long. Thank you so much for this speech. I'm a PhD student in the history department, and my question somehow connected to the last question. I'm curious about why there's such a gap between the different generations, their conceptions or their perception about the possibility of the war. Like the difference in generations, their cognition of the war. Like
Are you talking about the Taiwanese or
yeah, the
Chinese?
Taiwanese.
Taiwanese.
Yeah, like you mentioned, the younger generation of Taiwanese. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, the first question is, well, under these circumstances, what can younger generation do? Actually, not only the younger generation, I think it is very important for the private sector, the non-government sector, to really strive for peace, because the politicians or the parties run on a power logic. When you run on the power logic, then, for example, you probably would advocate conflict in order to earn votes. Or the Chinese leaders, they might say very harsh words in order to satisfy the current mood of the populace. And that's for domestic consume. And therefore, I think for the people, both on the Chinese side and the Taiwanese side, really have to make an effort. It's kind of a civilian effort, which is very different from the government, to try to reach understanding across the strait. So for the younger generation who are sitting here, you should try to make friends with the Taiwanese. Once you understand what the Taiwanese think and why they are insistent on certain things, then your attitude will change. And the same goes with the Taiwanese. You have to understand the Chinese. It's not like what the politicians try to paint it as just the devil. There are many layers. When you call it the devil, you have to look from behind, from the side. What does that mean? It's never just one block of concrete. So it's very important for the younger generation from both sides to try to really understand the other, okay? And that goes to your second question, why are the Taiwanese younger generation so indifferent about this whole thing, according to my speech. The younger generation of Taiwan, they did not grow up like when I was young. We grew up with one national narrative. We were supposed to be patriotic. So when you grow up in just one restrictive narrative, you act in one way. The Taiwanese, the younger generation in Taiwan, they don't live with one narrative. They have a lot of choices in front of them. And therefore, this preoccupation with the possibility of war is only a small part in their world. You could say, well, how naive are you? Because it could happen. Yes, they are naive. But that's the fact. So are they going to be waken up by a bomb? They could. But however, so they probably, everybody would, people would change when things really happen. Well, I remember what a Syrian scholar told me. When the war was going on in Syria, and he was living in Germany, and he told his mother to leave the village. She refused to, like her relatives in the village. Even when she heard at night the bombing in the next village, she still believed it will not come to my village. So for the younger generation of Taiwan, many of them actually don't believe that war is going to happen. And their lifestyle is full of freedom. So they don't think it's something that's imminent.
My friend from Wuhan believes that in order for Xi Jinping to be an equal historically with Mao Zedong, he needs to conquer Taiwan and be a conquering hero, just like Mao Zedong liberated China. Mm-hmm. So, and I think that a lot of people like him have this kind of psychologizing of the communist view towards Taiwan, thinking about how they see it from an historical perspective and how that motivates their position. Is this something that people in Taiwan think about and worry about? And is there any validity, do you think, to this theory of my friend?
In other words, so the question is whether the Taiwanese think Xi Jinping,
yeah. Psychological aspects of how Chinese and their leadership are motivated towards conquering Taiwan, and how that sort of fits into the power equation of what's going to happen.
Well, I can't say how the 23 million Taiwanese think, but personally, like the farmer friends, I also think a conflict is inevitable. It's a matter of time.
So like you just said, in the world, only China and America has rights to play the game, and Taiwan doesn't have any rights to play a role. Do you think how people gave Taiwan the right to they should have?
How should the Taiwanese do?
How would they gain the right?
Yeah. How do
what
they,
should the Taiwanese do?
like, how people gave Taiwanese the right to play the role they should have?
Okay, how does the world community, what the world should do in order to recognize the right of the Taiwanese?
Yes, like,
Okay. Okay, thank
I'm
you.
sorry, I didn't make it to,
Thank you,
make
thank
it
you,
sense.
thank you. I'll try to answer that. The second one, right here, right here. Yeah.
My name is Ray, and I'm a student from mainland China. And I have a question about there is so much tension between the strait and is that farmers and all the local citizens from Taiwan are do not appreciate the war, and but there's a lot of tension between the strait. So what do you think the press and the media from both sides could do their role in contributing toward peace across the strait?
So I'm like you, who grew up in that narrative. Tian Wenhao, old friend.
Yes.
Hi.
Yes. Hi.
So
long time no
I
see.
just want to share that there are a number of us. Our heart is boiling, like us. You know, I'm your generation, and so the urge of our parents who gone through World War II, we left, right? And we spent 30, 40 years in America and everywhere else. And this is the time for us to go home. We raised our kids, had a career, and listening to you, it makes me want to go tomorrow. So the homeland, seemingly that for us, forever is not accessible. So, you know, I don't know what I'm sharing, but I do want to just say that there are a number of us in the audience, I'm sure I saw Xia Laoshi here, that we're just boiling. We don't know what question to ask, but this hopeless feeling of this forever long nomadic life for people like us in this generation. So there's something I want to do, you know? So what can we do? We just want to do something.
Thank you. I understand. Thank you. Okay. The Taiwanese should have the right to decide their own fate. And how do the Taiwanese achieve that? The reality of international geopolitics is there. So you have the two powers competing with each other, and Taiwan being the flashpoint in that battlefield. So what do the Taiwanese do? They could not, of course, they could not just lie down and say, I give up, whatever happens, whatever comes, comes. That's one attitude. 躺平 is one attitude. But I don't think the Taiwanese should do that. In a matter of 70 years, in fact, what the Taiwanese have achieved is indeed a miracle. After World War II, and then after 1949, the Taiwanese, the 6 million Taiwanese who just woke up from a new Taiwan, the colonial power of Japan left. So that the 6 million Taiwanese had to start out again from scratch on their own. And then 4 years later, 1.5 million Chinese from Taiwan landed on this island. And they too had to find a way of so-called fusion And they too had to start scratch from poverty, from war-stricken poverty and chaos. I remember when I was a child how poor Taiwan was. So the Taiwanese had built up they become an economic power in the world. How did they achieve that? And not only that, they have also turned themselves into an authentic, robust democracy. How did they achieve that? So I think the 23 million Taiwanese could be really proud of themselves, what they have done in the past 7 decades. And if in this new game of geopolitics, the world is going to watch Taiwan turning into, I don't know, turning into a destroyed land, both at its democratic system and its economy. I think that's a tragedy, not only for the Taiwanese, but for the whole world community, if you let something like that happen. I only hope, and I think there are many, many, many thinking people in China, even within the leadership. They do not want to see this happen either. And I think what we can do is the Taiwanese have to try our best to unite force with the Chinese as well. I am very sure there are many, many Chinese who do not want to invade Taiwan, who actually have a longing for an open society in China, for democracy in China as well. And these are our friends, not our enemy. So you really have to get together with people who also believe in democracy, have to get them together. It's kind of a united front. And no, the Taiwanese are not going to give up, but war is not the only choice. What I personally am opposed to is that the exclusive focus on war games and no peace games. If the government talks about war games, then the private sector, the people, have to really work hard on peace games on both sides of the strait. Okay? And you talk about the media. Yes, the media in China, even the media in Taiwan as well, they are both not free. They're both coerced. But so where is the positive force which would affect these coerced media? It's the people. That's us. Every civilian, every thinking civilian has to do. Nobody else is going to do it for you. And Ms. Tian, I understand your feelings completely, because as Taiwanese, I still can't believe that I would wake up in the morning and read about war. My parents' generation, their lives were really half destroyed by Second World War. And for me, I still can't believe that I give a talk like today. It's unreal to me. So let's work hard for peace on both sides of the strait. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Lang. I'm Frank. I'm a Boston Institute of Nonprofit Journalism. So I have a question is that, will the Russia's invasion of Ukraine bring fear to the Taiwanese people? And how's the daily atmosphere of the current Taiwanese people? And as we also can see, like the People Liberation Army of CCP has done multiple military drills as the US and Taiwanese governments exchange their opinions more oftenly. Is the government of Taiwan fully prepared, and is the threat imminent?
The two parties, the ruling party DPP and the KMT, they have very different narratives and very different attitude about cross-strait relations. And the KMT stressed that peace is very important, and probably DPP will stress that independence is very important. So the Taiwanese are very divided as well. And as to whether the Taiwanese government is ready for war, I don't know, because we don't know everything about the national, what the defense ministry does. And also, the government should not be represented only by the national defense ministry. What about the economic affairs ministry? What do they think? What about agriculture? So there are, in terms of government decision, there are so many aspects that have to be considered. So I can't answer if the government is prepared. In that war game, I raised the question whether are there enough body bags. Actually, it was a very provocative question because I don't believe the government is prepared. And the government is not telling everything. I don't know if they are prepared, but I would think that they are not. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, just like your relationship with the so-called indigenous people in indigenous community, because I assume you were kind of a socio-economic elite type of urban symbol, right?
What's my relationship with the village, the indigenous people in the village? Oh, this is different. This is easy to answer. There are, for example, in this indigenous village, Dulan, I have many sisters, meaning I go out drinking with them, and they really drink. So they would take me to a bar, and they are all women, and we will eat and drink, and when we leave the bar, the table probably have 50 bottles of beer. So these sisters of mine, they are drinkers. And we also do other things. They take me to their farm. And so if you're talking about the difference in terms of social status between me and the village people, if that's what you're talking about, I would have to say the Han Chinese really have to learn the lesson of being humble, because in the past 300 years of Taiwanese history, the Chinese took the land away from the indigenous. And typically, they have treated the indigenous like colonialists. And the average Han Chinese, we have the Hokkien speakers and also Hakka speakers in the town. When I first arrived there, I also noticed that along the main streets where the tourists and more customers would go to the shops, all these shops are owned by, not by the indigenous, but by the Hokkien and Hakka speakers. So even today, the economic structure is still the indigenous. So I tried to look for the indigenous shops and eateries and restaurants. They were in the back streets in the village. So even today, in economic status and social status, there is still a big difference. This is actually, you probably should go to my talk at Harvard Yenching on the 27th September. This is what I'm going to talk about on 27th of September.
Basically, my question is, do you believe that there's a way for China and Taiwan to coexist peacefully with whether it means Taiwan being a partially independent territory, a fully independent nation, but still be able to maintain its democracy and system of government?
Yeah. Okay. There is a deadlock here. I think many people who know Taiwan would say, oh, Taiwan is very divided. Yes, like the US is horribly divided at the moment. But I think there is a general consensus among the Taiwanese, whichever party you belong, The consensus is the Taiwanese do not want to lose their way of life, what they have today. They don't want to live under a system where there is constant surveillance, where you have to report to the police station, where you are afraid that somebody is going to appear at your door, where the writers will not have fear that you'll be censored or all your books will be off the shelves. So this is the lifestyle the Taiwanese try very hard to sustain and to keep. And you ask if there is ever going to be a way where Taiwan and China can coexist. I don't know, because in terms of realpolitik, the realistic politics, power usually determines the end. So if we go along that logic, then the end will be very bad. But even knowing that the power logic is there, we're not going to lie down, Tangping, right? So you still have to try hard. I think the Taiwanese really have to learn to make the Chinese understand what we really care. So the Taiwanese, I don't think we should just jump to confrontation, treating the Chinese as the enemy. I never believe that. I believe that you just have to try your best to make the other understand who you are and what you want. So that's the effort. I think the Taiwanese have not done enough. You have to make the Chinese really understand where it hurts and where is something is untouchable. So this desire to live in an open system, I think is the core, is the absolute core of the Taiwanese belief. And the Taiwanese simply have to be, yes, you just have to convince the other and make the other truly understand your position. And at the same time, the knowledgeable Chinese and the good Chinese really have to be very clear about it. And I think many Chinese do understand it, but it's the political structure there. Your true voice cannot come out. You know, you only see the voice expressed by the 人民日报 or 环球时报. You don't hear the true voice. And I do believe there is a huge number of the Chinese who also believe in open society, who also desire to live in a system where you don't have to be under surveillance. I think there are millions and millions of Chinese who have that desire as well. And the Taiwanese must make them your friends. And that is really very important. And the Taiwanese should not believe their own government propaganda as well, that the government tries to make China your enemy. Then don't believe that. You just have to try to bridge this difference and try to live in a free society. Okay, we have to try our best.
Okay, let's give her a hand.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.